Waziri, thank you so much for sitting down with us and giving us your time. Let's begin with the COVID-19 pandemic. It was a health crisis no one saw coming or could even prepare for. I remember listening to a US governor that described it this way. It's as if we were building the airplane while flying it. Would you say that's pretty much how response has been?
I think so. I think that's a perfect, is a perfect metaphor for it. And for me, I just walked into the ministry. I walked in the ministry on the 28th of February. On I think the 12th or 13th of March is when we got the first case of COVID-19. So you can imagine, the whole, I think it is so easy to forget how the month of March, April, May, the kind of situation that Kenya was in. And not just Kenya, globally. And it was all grouping in the dark. Nobody knows exactly what is supposed to happen. A shortage of everything. No PPEs, nothing, no hospital beds, And I keep repeating this, that at the point when we got our first case, we had eight beds in the country. 8, as in 8 beds at Kenyatta National Hospital. That was 8. It was a very big challenge, not just for me as the CS for Health, but for the entire government. And our biggest fear at the time was that we were going to go the European way or the South American way, where the health sector had been completely overwhelmed. It was like a nightmare scene. And sometimes, to be honest with you, I couldn't sleep. Some days I just couldn't sleep. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and start sending messages so that people can see them in the morning, sending them to my colleagues, particularly members of the NAC committee. I would send them messages at 3 a.m. in the morning so that when they wake up, they see them, but I would immediately see an answer. In other words, they were not sleeping either. So it was that sort of scene. So yes, I would agree with you that it was like driving, let me also rephrase it. It was driving a car and you're in the hood at the same time trying to connect the wires.
As you mentioned, it was and still is a big challenge. And one of the byproducts of that big challenge is concerns that we've seen from the doctors. Some of them have not had pay. They show up, the front line, they've complained about PPEs. There was a story that a local daily did on the late Dr. Mogusu. And he said, I have a daughter. I come into work every single day. I've not been paid for 5 months and I can't even afford diapers for her. When you look at the plight of a doctor who gives of himself, as much as you say that they're paid well, I don't know how many individuals, Kenyans, would agree to come to work every day without a salary.
That's precisely my point. You see, and let's put things in perspective. When the doctor passed away, and we have had others pass away, unfortunately, and I'm afraid it is in the realms of things you can also expect that perhaps even other health workers, like other Kenyans, may pass away, and they are doing so all over the world every day. Unfortunately, it's very unfortunate, and it's sad. But also, it is not good for us or the unions either to take advantage, to create emotion out of a circumstance that perhaps they have not quite understood or which they know and want to take advantage of. First and foremost, we have got doctors. We've got about 1,000 doctors that we hired on short term for a 6 months period. We have got another lot that we hired for a year on contracts of a year and so on and so forth, with different terms of engagement, separate from the doctors who work on permanent basis. And for us, we saw it as an opportunity for us to at least assist some doctors who are out there without jobs and say to ourselves, we need doctors. Even if we don't have the money to hire doctors, can we at least look for something to hire these ones to assist us during this time of COVID and hopefully we look for money to see whether we can engage them on permanent basis and therefore on new terms basis. This is just happening now as we are going along. And I can tell you, for example, for instance, when the unions were saying that the doctor had not been paid, yes, there was a delay in their payments given the terms of their engagement, but we did pay them, and we have paid them. All right? Now, so it is very unfortunate. The whole thing is very unfortunate, and I feel for the family. After all, I am a Kenyan. You know, I have children too, you know, who are in fact older than this doctor. So for me, it was a gut-wrenching feeling. And when I see the complaints, I understand it. But I can also separate the issue of genuine mourning and genuine feelings and the issue of using the young man's death for political purposes, for union political purposes. And that I condemn. It's disgusting, really. Of course, it is in nobody's interest, you know, to keep somebody's salary. First and foremost, it's wrong, really, because, you know, they deserve it. But you and I also know that the circumstances in which we have been operating are not the best of circumstances. And even in your own organization, Citizen, I will put money on the fact that things have not been flowing as well as they normally do. And it is hypocritical of people, you know, to look at the government as if the government is a very separate institution away into other countries. It's in this country. We have our challenges. We are not perfect. We have made mistakes. But that is not to say that we don't care. It is one thing to have a mistake and quite another not to care. We care. We care a lot.
We can't have this conversation without talking about the elephant in the room. And that's a scandal at KEMSA. Unfortunately, it came at a time of crisis. The Auditor General's report revealed that 7.6 billion shillings was diverted from the Universal Health Care plan to now get COVID-related material. Do you fear that this is a blemish on your record?
Not at all, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. It's because when eventually the story of KEMSA is properly written, because unfortunately, people don't like to read. Generally, people don't read. They like to talk, not to read. And let me tell you the issues at KEMSA, just so it's clear. The first issue has to do with the price of goods at KEMSA. And I've explained it to everybody and sundry. And if you go to the Senate today and you go to Parliament today, institutions that have been involved in this thing, we have explained it to the point where everybody understands it. And I would like somebody to go to Nairobi Hospital, go to Kenyatta Hospital, go to Aga Khan Hospital, and ask them, how much were you buying PPEs in March, April, and May? How much was a PPE at Aga Khan? All right? Then ask, how much did KEMSA buy the PPE at in March? All right? Which is when all these things were happening, March, April, May. And you will find that the desperation the whole world was under, because our memories are short, we forget what we were going through in those months. When I was begging for PPEs from Aga Khan Hospital, it is because they had already agreed to buy the hospital at the higher prices that were in the market at the time, and we were still struggling ourselves. So they were high.
But pricing aside, I mean, the tendering process also came under scrutiny, to be honest.
And it should.
Right.
And it should. And I'll tell you what happened. Again, this takes some reading. Under emergency procurement, all right, when you, for example, are looking for reagents to treat people or under emergency procurement, and again, people can go to the procurement laws and see this, under emergency procurement, whenever there is a serious emergency, you cannot wait to go through a tendering system. And that is not really the question. The question, if you look at the Auditor General's report, that is not really the question. The question is this under emergency procurement? If it's under emergency procurement, then it is passed as an emergency procurement issue. And when there's an emergency procurement, you don't have time to go to tender and evaluation and so on and so forth. You get all these things, and then you have to go through the process of ensuring that the books are straightened out, because you can't wait. And what is happening right now, let me tell you, is that we have shortages of some things in the country, reagents and so on. We are telling KEMSA, please procure these things under emergency rules. They are saying we can't. We can't. Because nobody in this country is going to understand what emergency rules are. And the acting CEO and the chair will tell me, Mutai, I mean, we want to sacrifice, but surely we're not going to sacrifice our lives. You know, you tell us to buy these things under emergency. When we go everywhere, nobody will ever understand what emergency is. We'll be in the dock again.
But even with emergency, would you admit there were some irregularities in the process?
Let me tell you what irregularities were there. There was an irregularity where, for example, there was an attempt to try and procure goods at KEMSA without the knowledge of the Ministry of Health, which we stopped. No goods were procured under those rules. That is an illegality. All right, trying to get goods from at KEMSA. All payments of KEMSA for government procured goods come through the Ministry of Health. Anything outside that is an illegality. That's one issue that I concede with you. The second one, which is perhaps even more, which is also questionable, is the issue of the quantity of goods purchased and the budget thereof. Because under normal circumstances, if you are going to go through above the budget that we have allocated you as a government, you are supposed to go to the board, to the board of directors. And the board is supposed to say, we want to pass the budget because of the circumstances around us. And we as a ministry would then approve that you go over budget. The board was not consulted. So that is not procedural, you know, and that's wrong. So yes, there are a number of things in KEMSA that are wrong, but not everything in KEMSA is wrong. And I think this is where we are throwing away the baby and the bathwater as well.
And I know the president was quite concerned about it. You know, it's not good optics, but he requested your ministry to at least ensure there was a transparent tendering process. He gave at least 30 days. That was lapsing September 30th. Had that been done at all?
It's done. Today, when you leave here, go to your computer, say you want to procure something from KEMSA, everything is online. It's under IFMIS. Done. Deal.
So you're happy with how the process has gone so far?
I am not happy yet, because the fundamental changes that we need to make at KEMSA have not been done yet. And I know that the chairman is with me all the time talking about what we need to do. And but don't forget also that there is at the moment an ongoing investigation, some of which we have asked for ourselves. And the investigations that are going on also mean that before the investigations are concluded, your hands are kind of tied up about things that you can do. So we have to be a bit patient. We are determined to straighten out KEMSA. We are determined to make it a premier purchasing institution. We will make changes in terms of what they buy, and some of these things that are not necessarily, must not necessarily be procured by KEMSA. But overall, it's a useful institution that is supposed to take care of economies of scale, to be able to bring down, you know, the cost of health commodities. That's the whole idea. And therefore, what I don't want us to do is to lose the idea, you know, see the tree and miss out on the forest.
And as we wrap up, looking forward to 2021, I know many would want to forget the year that was. There's been talk of a vaccine. Some hope in that space in terms of tackling this disease. Are you a believer that a vaccine will be the silver bullet, or do we have a lot more that we have to do?
I think for me, the silver bullet is changing behavior. The silver bullet, for us, at least for now, the silver bullet is our change in behavior, if at all you can call it that. But I think that we are all hopeful that we will get a vaccine. I hope so. We are working on one ourselves as in collaboration with other countries. We want to start testing. You know, we want to be part of the arrangements for production of the vaccines that are going on across the world. And we are very keen on vaccines, keeping in mind, of course, that we also have to keep ourselves cautious. We also have to move cautiously and to ask ourselves the efficacy of whatever vaccines that we are going to use in our nation. The possibilities of making sure that we have a priority list of who do we start with, who do we end with, because it is not possible for us to have enough vaccines for everybody at once. So we have a team in the Ministry of Health, a team of very, very qualified individuals who are studying this whole thing all the way from how we acquire the vaccine, how we store the vaccine, how we transport the vaccine, and how we give the vaccine to people. Because all those are very many logistical issues that need to be looked at. So we are hopeful that next year we will indeed start vaccinating people. I've also been very impressed with Kenyans. And because sometimes we have a tendency of just looking at what is not working and forget what has worked. Because what we see in our nation in terms of our healthcare facilities not being overrun, the propping up of the healthcare facilities to a level that we have never seen since independence. I mean, for instance, during this period, starting about the month of September or so, by the time we finish this year, we will have built up about 25 new hospitals, 19 of them completely new hospitals in Nairobi alone. 19 new hospitals in Nairobi alone. And then the completion of another 6 hospitals that are on the way of being built, Korogosho, Mama Lucy, Shauri Moyo. These are hospitals that had been left out over years. And for the first time, the city of Nairobi, by this time of next year, much earlier, we'll have 25 new hospitals. Now, this is a tremendous achievement, if I may say so myself. So for me, I see the challenges, yes, but I also see the silver lining in the challenges. I also see the change in behavior of our people just becoming cleaner and more conscious. It used to be you'd go into a place and you're having your lunch and somebody would walk in, oh, let me have 1 chips. You don't see that anymore. Nobody's going to do that. So this change in behavior is something that Kenyans should also be proud of. And I think moving forward into next year, I think that things will get better. All right? I'm an optimist. I believe that things will get better. We will deal with the challenges that we have. We will deal with the challenges, whether at KEMSA, whether it's elsewhere, and we will go on improving. The idea is to keep moving forward and improving every day, and I believe that it can get better.
Thank you so much, Waziri, and for your note of optimism. Hopefully that takes us through into 2021. We appreciate your time.